In 2005, two brothers set off on a road trip that would eventually save the world and change television. For 15 seasons and 327 episodes, Supernatural took audiences on a wild ride of family, fate, and faith, with a rocking soundtrack and a seriously cool car.
But that was then, and this is now. And while the show might have ended, we're not quite done with the journey. And that's why we're watching it all over again, diving deep into every episode of Supernatural with the fine folks who made it. And we're taking you along for the ride.
I'm Rob Benedict. I played Chuck Shirley, a.k.a. God. And yes, that's a bit of a spoiler, but spoilers are going to be fair game here.
And I'm Richard Speight Jr., and I played the Trickster, also known as the Archangel Gabriel. We'll be talking about the entire series, so don't say we didn't warn you.
So buckle up and settle in.
This is Supernatural, then and now.
Hi, everybody. It's Rob Benedict.
And Richard Speight.
And we're here to talk about episode 103, entitled Dead in the Water.
Ooh.
Following a lead after mysterious drowning, Sam and Dean investigate the town of Lake Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
Wait, those guys are back?
Yeah, turns out they're back. Where they meet Sheriff Jake Devens, his daughter and recent widow Andrea Barr, and her son Lucas, who hasn't spoken since his father drowned in the lake earlier this year. Dean, however, makes connection with another boy who saw something terrible.
Good Dean.
After the brother and father of the first victim drown as well. Lots of drowning in this episode.
Good note.
The boys theorize a vengeful spirit of a boy named Peter is haunting the lake, taking revenge for his death 35 years before, and that Bill, the father, was involved.
Man, that's a lot of moving parts.
Lots of stuff happening. I hope you watched and are following along. But Peter isn't done. Andrea is targeted and nearly drowned by the ghost.
Ow!
But Sam and Dean save her. With the help of Lucas, they discover it was Andrea's father, Jake, along with Bill, who let Peter drown and covered it up. And Peter is killing everyone Jake loved. Peter drags Lucas into the lake, but Jake offers himself instead to save his grandson.
Well, that's the right thing to do.
Get ready. Spoiler alert. Jake dies.
Well, there you go.
But Dean is able to save Lucas.
Thank gosh.
And our hearts. Once again, Dean saving our hearts.
Good Lord.
Yeah, lots happening. It's a big episode.
Big episode.
We are lucky to have Robert Singer, executive producer, on the show with us today. We talk about all things Singer.
Right, we do.
We actually get a chance to talk about Kim Manners, who directed this episode and who sadly passed away during season 4 of the show.
Yeah, legend of the industry, directed a bunch of X-Files. Actually was, I think, one of the creative producers on X-Files. And just a huge history in the business. And Supernatural was lucky enough to get him on board as a visionary of the show early on. And then he passed away, surprisingly, in the middle of season 4.
As well as, in addition to Bob Singer, we talked to Amy Acker, who played the mother, Andrea, on the show.
She sure did.
And she's also, what would you say, a veteran of showbiz.
She's a darn near a big star is what she is.
Yeah,
she works all the time.
Done a lot of work, and she talks with us as well. So it's quite an episode. And without further ado, here it is. We're so lucky today. We've got really the bigwig of the show.
The brass.
The brass. Mr. Robert Singer, executive producer extraordinaire, is with us. Hi, Bob.
Hi, guys. How are you? Miss you.
Miss you, too.
Yeah, just sort of historical reference, and people listen to this in the time capsule years from now.
Right.
We had all planned on being in the same room.
Right.
But COVID.
COVID
came in.
Yeah.
Ruined it for everybody.
Yeah. And in fact, when the show ended, we had planned to all have a wrap party together and say goodbye. We never had that either.
COVID. I blame COVID.
It was an odd end after 15 years. I mean, I'm glad we got to actually finish the show, but it would have been nice to have been, shoot the ending that we had initially planned to shoot, and also had everybody there so we could all hug and kiss and say our proper goodbyes.
Yeah, after 15 years.
Instead of 9 people in hazmat suits waving from a bridge. But we are off topic here because really this is about the beginning.
We're back
of
at the beginning.
The origin.
We're talking today about episode 3, Dead in the Water.
Or 103, as they like to say in the business.
Sure. So before we get into the episode, let's talk a bit about you, Bob, and how you came to be a part of Supernatural. What was the initial collaboration with Eric Kripke like, and how did that come about?
Well, they did the pilot, which Eric produced and David Nutter directed, and it was a terrific pilot. And when it got picked up to go to series, Warner Brothers, in their wisdom, thought that Eric might need a older, steadier hand at the wheel. I'm not sure that was true. Eric hit the ground running, but They sent me the pilot. I looked at the pilot. I thought it was terrific. I thought the guys were terrific. Nutter, as usual, did a bang-up job. So I was interested. Eric and I probably met 3, maybe 4 times. It is that usual thing, where they try to make a marriage where the young creator probably says, what do I need this old fart for? But we got along really great. And Eric said, let's meet one more time. And I said, Eric, I've told you everything I could tell you. Let's do it or not do it. But
yeah.
And we went forward. And I must say, it was probably after, years in this business, it was probably the best working relationship I've had. We connected right away.
Yeah, and I think your collaboration sort of speaks for itself because of the tenure, the strength of the show. Here's my question for you. Rewind even beyond that. Before that, what had you been doing? So obviously you're a man with a massive resume, been in TV forever, in movies forever. What had you been doing previous to this to sort of set you up for this moment? I mean, what made this a good fit in the eyes of people who make that kind of decision?
Well, there's certainly a value in experience, and God knows I had a lot of that. And I think they wanted Eric to be comfortable. He had an experience, I think, before this on another show that didn't really work out, and they had put him with another elder producer, and it didn't work out too well. And those marriages rarely do, because the young creators says, do I really need this guy? And then there are guys who will come in and say, well, this kid doesn't know what he's doing. I better take the show over. So those marriages oftentimes don't work. I thought Eric's vision of the show was really kind of locked in and pretty much set in stone. He knew what he wanted to do. I agreed with most things that he wanted to do. And once he pushed the button, it was, like I said, it was just smooth sailing. The only, I think it was the first year, he wanted to do bugs. And I said, this is...
Man, that is the show that always comes up. I mean, it always comes up as except for bugs. If not for bugs,
So I said, now this is not going to work. And he goes, no, it'll be great. It'll be great. And, sometimes you learn from your mistakes, right?
That
was
so
a
funny.
Mistake. And Eric came to me afterwards and he goes, the next time you say no, I'm going to listen to you.
Yeah, there you go. Now, this is a rudimentary question for the veterans like ourselves, for people who don't necessarily know the industry as well as we do. Give people an overview of what an executive producer does. What did you come in and start doing in your role on the show?
Well, the first thing you do is you get a writing staff together, and Eric had some people in mind, and he hired them. John Scheiben, I think, was with the original group. And you start breaking the stories of where you see the show going. So a lot of time is spent there. What I did was, Eric really took the lead there, and it was an open room, and it was not a lot of disagreements going on. People can express their honest opinions, and everybody's opinion is respected. Ultimately, Eric or I would have the final word. Also putting together a group to shoot in Vancouver. I think the best thing I added to that was the hiring of Serge, the DP, who's from Montreal. And the studio is going, Jesus, what do we need a guy from Montreal for? Can't we get a local cameraman? And I said, no. This is the guy. And Serge really wanted the job. He flew in from Montreal to have an interview for this show. I had really liked his reel, and I thought he would be perfect. And over some objections from the studio, they said, okay, this is the guy you want. Fine, go with him. That was probably early on. My greatest contribution was finding Serge.
Well, which was a huge one.
Yeah.
He went the whole run with us from the beginning to end. And they're just getting scripts in shape, hiring directors. Before I actually signed on, they had hired a few directors. And as we get into Dead in the Water, I'll give you some insights on that because Kim directed that.
Yeah.
So that's it. You get it up and running. There's going to be bumps along the way. You get scripts that are not up to snuff. Are they worth rewriting? Even if we rewrite them, are they going to be good?
Right.
Starting a show is always a bumpy road. We didn't avoid some of the bumps. They were there.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Jared and Jensen, great individually and fantastic together, I think carried us over some of the weak spots early on, just with their charisma and the way they work together.
Yeah, Rich and I were noting that just going back and watching these episodes. From the beginning, Rich said this morning, it holds up so well.
Yeah, the show really holds up.
And the guys are such a huge part of that. I mean, there's no one more masculine than Jensen Ackles on the WB at this point, right? I mean, they're turning in performances as young 20-year-olds that are top notch.
Yeah, it's really interesting to go back and watch because, we sort of have embedded ourselves in the last few seasons. But if you pause and go back to the beginning, the show is built on such a solid foundation. They're so good together. The stories are super strong. And they're great actors. Mm-hmm. Aside from just being good chemistry, they're really solid. The characters are well-defined and they're good in the roles.
Yes, absolutely. And they were cast long before I got there, and it was a really a good job of casting. But, you don't always know when you cast these things initially if the chemistry is going to be there. In this case, it really was. And the guys generally liked each other and continue to be good friends. When I did Lois and Clark, Terry and Dean had great chemistry together. Off screen, not so much.
Right.
This was the perfect storm. They're great on screen together and they're great personally together. And that really come through. So I think they could cover some of the early mistakes we made, whether it would be in scripts or the way the show was shot. They really carried the ball for us.
Well, let me get into that because, talking about this episode. So the episode before this, Wendigo, it functioned almost as part 2 of the pilot. It was focused on the monster and the search for John and the boys finding their way and their purpose. This episode focused a little more on characters. We got to see more that Dean's more than just a bad boy, that he's kind of a scared little kid inside that really cares about people. And even Sam, he's first kind of this nerdy, gentle brother, but really he's the one that's most like his dad, John, and bent on revenge.
Right.
Were these conversations at this point you guys were having in the room about fleshing out these characters, or was Eric clear on this from the beginning, or were there pivots you had to make from the pilot in terms of exploring more who these guys are, who Sam and Dean are?
No, I think Eric had a clear-eyed look at that. I think he knew what he wanted. How it would unfold, how quickly we would get into mythology was always a discussion.
What do you mean by that? So mythology meaning?
Well, you have mythology episodes and standalone episodes.
Okay.
Monster of the Week, or an episode that would be purely about the search for John and whatever they would do, and that would fall into the mythology category. So we didn't quite know what that balance should be early on, and you kind of find your way in that. As seasons went on, we were able to kind of lay out early on in the season. We say, okay, we're going to do this many standalones. We're going to do this many mythology episodes. Even in the standalones, there are always nods to the mythology to keep that going.
Right.
So listen, Dead in Water, Sarah Gamble, Rael Tucker, it's their debut on the show as writers. So obviously it had big impact, especially Sarah had a huge impact on the show, taking the role of showrunner years later. How did that relationship start? Were they original gangsters of the original writers' room, and how did their work on the show play out as their debut started?
Yeah, we were really happy with that script. They came as a team, and I can remember him saying, "God, I really, this is what the show could be and should be." That script.
Yeah.
Right.
It also was. I can remember the reason I thought that it was all right. So I was prepping that. Well, that's another story. I wasn't supposed to direct any in the first 13.
Oh, yeah?
They wanted me in L.A. guiding the ship.
Right.
Eugenie's mother got ill. She was in Chicago, and she was ill, and we flew to Chicago. She was in the hospital, and I got a call from Eric and I can't even remember the director's name, but the director who was supposed to direct that episode, Phantom Traveler, bailed out, and you have to go up to Vancouver. I can tell you my wife was not happy. I said, listen, I got to go back to L.A., pack a bag, and go to Vancouver to prep it. And that was when I first met Kim. And I can remember going down on stage, and he was doing a shot, and it was just the little kid playing with some toys or something. But I was watching what Kim was doing, and I go, that's the way this show should look. Those are the kind of shots we should be doing. This guy gets it. And he had all those X-Files. I mean, he's a tremendous director. And I think in terms of style, the show really turned a corner with that episode.
Wow. And so that was sort of a guidance then for you doing the next episode. You kind of saw something and you wanted to sort of stay in
Well,
that.
I mean, I knew the way I shoot, and
Yeah.
I like to think of myself as having some style, but
I always think of you as very stylish.
Well, yes. If you can see what I see, you know what I mean?
but Kim just totally got it. Now, Kim's approach to directing and mine they're a little different.
Don't skip over that. I want to know, because obviously Rob's worked with you a lot. I've worked with you a lot. I worked with Kim once, and only for like a day or two, so I don't really know his style.
So yeah, talk a little bit about Kim and
his style.
his style, yeah.
And him as a person as well.
Okay. This show, and Kim would do this no matter what he was directing, but this show requires from a director, as you know, Rich, you got to really prepare. You couldn't walk in on a Supernatural set and just say, well, I'm just going to wing it. There was just too many moving pieces. In the early years, we had no permanent sets. Jerry Wanick, our production designer, was building sets like crazy. You just had to know your stuff. There were some people who tried to come in and wing it, and it showed. Kim's preparation was like nobody's I've ever seen. He not only had every shot he was going to do, he had lens sizes in his script.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's an amazing way to prepare. For me, he wouldn't give you a lot of options in the cutting room. He knew what it was he wanted, and he would shoot it that way, and this was the way you had to do it.
Yeah.
We used to have a running joke in the cutting rooms, even if it was some other director, and we were just looking for a shot that we thought might bridge something. And we'd say, well, no, Kim didn't shoot it. My approach is, while I prepare, clearly, is I like to leave room for some happy accidents. I'm not so locked into my prep that I don't allow for an actor suggestion, or if I'm setting up a shot, I go, oh, wait a minute, that looks kind of cool. Let's put a rack focus in there. Kim's stuff is great, but I've never seen anybody who he would just say, okay, put it here, put a 20 millimeter on, get it in the, sling it low, and then we're going to dolly in a 360.
Yeah.
That was it. That was just the way he worked.
Yeah. What was he like as a person? Was he, I would imagine him a little like you, Bob. Like, we always laugh and we say, hey, was that take okay? And you're like, oh, no, you're one of those kind of actors. And that's our Bob Singer. But was he kind of like that? Was he hard-nosed?
He was. I don't know that I'm hard-nosed.
I'm going to get a note. I'm going to get a note.
I never realized you thought of me that way.
I'm going to get a note about that later.
From Eugenie.
Kim could be really gruff. The actors love him because, again, he comes in and he knows what he wants. He's not going to be effusive in his praise of a take. We just all business with him. Okay, cut, print, that one's good. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
When you were around him socially, he was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Very gregarious and a lot of great war stories. But on set, he was all business. And, he became a producer, basically the producing director on the show. If a director wasn't up to snuff in Kim's eyes, he would let him know it. I mean, yeah.
Wow.
So you mean when he did this first episode, he was a hired gun for one, right? That's it. You guys brought him for one. Was it right after that you guys were like, oh, we're going to add him to the roster. We need him on board? Or how did that play out?
Well, early on, they're talking about having a producer director. And, that was a job that I always thought if you had a really good roster of directors, you didn't exactly need a producing director. I mean, the greatest thing about a producing director is, he's going to do 3-4 episodes a year.
Right.
That you'd be comfortable with him directing. For me, it was more important to have Phil Segrisha in the editing room running post. I kind of won that, and Eric ended up loving Phil, and he's on The Boys now. With Eric. But Kim came to do an episode. It was a great episode, and Peter Roth, who had been head of Fox and was there for all the X-Files years, said, well, maybe you should have Kim go up and be the producing director. And I said, great. If you want to add him to the budget, I'm all for it. And it really came from Peter Roth, the idea, and not that we didn't resist it for a second.
I hope you're enjoying the episode, but we need to pull over for a quick second for some messages. Hey, this is Richard Speight. You know what? It's 2024. It's a brand new year, and I bet you made some New Year's resolutions, and I bet one of them was to eat healthier. Well, you can get cranking on that resolution right now, my friend, with Factor.
Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, the prep work, the cooking fatigue. I'm getting tired just talking about it. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you will have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart this resolution off right. Forget frantic lunch prep and rush dinner making. That stinks. Factor's 2-minute meals, yes, I said 2 minutes, are your secret weapon in the new year. You get to fuel up fast with restaurant-quality meals all delivered right to your door. It doesn't get any easier than that. And Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks, and more to keep you going no matter what's on the schedule. So I know what you're asking. Rich, how do I tap into this Factor magic? You head to factormeals.com/SPNTAN50 and use code SPNTAN50 to get 50% off. That's a lot off. That's code SPNTAN50 at factormeals.com/SPNTAN50 for 50% off. Make that resolution happen now and make it happen at a discount. Fantastic food that's healthy and delicious and delivered right to my door. Now that is how you start the new year off right.
Thanks for listening. Now back to the episode.
Such an all-star roster when you look back at it now. You know, it's like when you look at like a Yankees team from like the 90s. And, wow, they had that guy and that guy. I mean, Bob Singer, Kim Manners.
I know.
You know, Eric.
Kripke, yeah,
Kripke. And then even people like Sarah Gamble, who now is doing shows like You and, you know, has been very successful.
Still,
Yeah.
So did Kim plant his flag up there in Vancouver? Was he permanently there?
Oh, yeah. He was very comfortable with that because he had spent so many years doing X-Files up there.
Right.
So, you know, when you were looking for a location, he had shot every location probably in Vancouver. He'd say, oh, you know, you should go out to that dock by the blah, 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 and that'll be perfect for you. You know?
Right.
Very helpful.
And well, speaking of doc, this script presents a lot of filmmaking challenges in that it has kids, like heavy lifting, the one child, Lucas, who's, you know, got a lot of drama to the role, and also then the kid in the water, you know, that whole sequence. And then you have water. You know, these are challenging elements to work into an episode of a TV show. This is not a TV movie. So I would assume that, A, Kim's expertise and longevity in the business helped in tackling those issues because he's been doing it so long. But early on, season 1 show, 3 episodes deep, that's a lot to tackle. I mean, how did that go? I guess is my question.
It went great. I mean, in the hands of a lesser director, I don't think it would have gone quite as well because, as you said, it was a really difficult episode to do. But by the time he rolled camera with Kim, he was ready to go. He knew what he wanted. People around him, the ADs or the camera people or the set people, everybody knew what their job was and what was expected of them. That was part of the way he operated. I mean, you know, it was difficult, you know, but you look at those dailies and you go, wow, this is good. You know, it was a good script with the right director. Tough stuff. Let me tell you, Vancouver water is never warm.
Right. Yeah. I thought about that when all the actors have to get in the water at the end of the show.
I didn't think about that. Of course, that would be a nightmare. Did we get it? One more.
You know, but Kim would just, you know, I mean, his personality, oh, shut up, just get in there and do the job. I don't know.
That's interesting to know that he was, again, because Rob and I know him from mythology only, really.
Yeah, for sure.
I did work with him once, and I stood there quietly because I was intimidated by the guy. And then at one point, while they're setting up a shot, which to your point was a very specific, it was a crane move for one line. It was like, vroop, and I was going to say like, I don't know, guys, and then that was it. It was just for one like little snippet. And I was kind of standing there quietly while they were setting it up, and he turned to me, he's like, so where are you from, young man? And I think I said, I'm from Nashville, before they were ready with the camera. He's like, all right, let's move on. Let's get the shot. I'm not sure I got Tennessee out. So that was my only exchange with him. But I am kind of surprised to find out because he seemed quieter to me. I didn't really know that he was more the snappity snap, you know, come on, let's go. Not a hugger, you're saying.
No, he was not a hugger, and if things were going well, he would just, low key. It was only if things were going less than well that he could be a curmudgeon.
Right.
A great guy. I mean, I miss him terribly.
Yeah. Well, the crew loved him. I mean, you could tell.
Yeah.
You mentioned missing him terribly. That was the theme for everybody. I mean, when he passed away, Rob and I were involved with the show, but we didn't know him well, but certainly we were around for the reaction.
People were in mourning when I came up to do my first episode. It was like this had just happened.
Everybody in the crew, like everybody down the line. He was somebody who wasn't just kind to the big people. Like, he obviously knew the crew, liked the crew, had the respect of the crew.
Oh, yeah, and I think he felt that he had certainly more of an affinity for the crew than the suits.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's just Kim's dad was basically a line producer. He took Route 66 on the road, and so Kim grew up around moving a production along. And before he's a director, I believe he was an AD, and he had a way. This is the way we're doing it, and everybody knows to the grindstone. And crews really appreciate that. The thing that would drive a crew crazy is a director walks on set and kind of, holds his chin and looks around in 360 degrees and trying to figure out what the hell he's going to do, and you get 75 people that just go, oh, God, now this is going to be a long day.
Yeah. I know.
Not like that with Kim. Or you, Rich, by the way. You're just so the audience knows, one of my favorite directors.
Hey, look at that,
Thank
Rich.
you, Bob. I appreciate that. Kind words from my mentor, the
your
guy who
stock
got me started.
going up and mine going down because the hashtag hard nose.
You're getting an angry letter from Eugenie, but Bob and I are going to have drinks.
Bob, speaking of related to people, is it true that you're related to Abby Singer?
No.
Okay.
Aha!
Okay, we heard that. We were like, how do we not know that?
Well, let's tell everybody who Abby Singer is, because I think there's a backstory there. So, legend of Abby Singer, Bob, go.
He's a studio guy and a production guy, and he could be tough. If you weren't shooting on time, if you were running behind, Abby was not helpful. Or he tried to be helpful, but he was tough. But he really came into the lexicon of movie talk, where Abby would think a show was running a day was running behind. He would come down to the set and he'd go, all right, what do we got left? All right. And the way you got Abby off the set was, this one and one more, and then we'll be done. This one and one more, and Abby would leave saying, okay, I guess it's 2 shots. We can live with that. It wasn't always true, but it was always this one and one more. And that shot, the next to last shot of the day, has been known as the Abbey. And as I was saying, I'm going to tell you, Rich, when we were in England shooting Sam Circus,
right,
the English assistant director, when we get the next to the last shot, he goes, okay, boys, it's the Abbey, right? And I'm going, how do they know about the Abbey? So I went to him and I said, how do you know the Abbey? He goes, I don't know. We just call it that.
Oh, my gosh. It had just become a part of...
It had traveled across the Atlantic. They had no idea why they were calling it the Abbey.
They probably thought it was about some kind of church.
Yeah, exactly. Time for us to go pray for forgiveness for this shoot.
That's so
wow,
funny.
that's amazing.
I thought you were going to be like, and they call it the Giles.
So I want to solidify one thing. It's definitely not... He wasn't a first AD.
Abbey, he probably was originally, and then he moved into production.
But he became famous for being this guy. It was when he was up the food chain.
Yeah.
Not a first AD version of himself.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. That's the way I heard the story.
Yeah. Second last shot's the Abbey, and then the last shot is the Martini.
Or the window, if you're in Canada.
Really?
Yeah. In Canada, it's called the window.
Why? You're going to jump out the window?
You're going to get paid at the window.
Oh, wow.
There's the window for your paycheck. Whereas in America, you just start drinking.
Yeah.
I think in England, it's the window, too.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Here's a question. So the shot at the beginning of this episode, the girl gets attacked from underwater, and you see the shot of her from below looking up, and she's swimming. It's very Jaws-like. Are those homages on purpose? Is someone going, hey, let's do a Jaws homage here? There were some Japanese horror-looking shots and a little bit of Carrie. Is that on purpose, or is that just because that's another scary underwater shot?
I think it's It's probably a little of both. I don't think that I'm not sure how Kim felt, but you do the shot that you think is required. Now, you wouldn't say, well, that's an homage to Jaws, right? But somewhere in your head, you were thinking, what's the best way to do this shot? And then subconsciously,
Right.
I think good directors have seen good movies.
Right.
And, things sort of stick with you.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Like, that's an iconic shot.
Whether you're aware of it or not, you do
Right.
that. I remember I was doing a pilot and I wanted to do this shot where the sun was rising and this Jeep was going across this desert landscape. I was explaining the shot to Adam Kane, who was the DP on that show, right? And he said, oh, yeah, you want the Raiders shot.
Right.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we all have our kind of
Sure.
points of influence,
Yeah.
and
Right.
they kind of stick with you, and whether you're aware of it or not, it's there.
Yeah. It's
And you're probably pulling it from somebody else. Like that shot was probably inspired. Like
Sure.
Spielberg probably pulled that shot from something he saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same in music. You're always doing everything boils back to something the Beatles did, which boils back to something that, all of their influences.
Yeah, exactly. The Beach Boys did or whatever.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. You do this episode 103. It's water, it's kids, it's big, and it's a home run because Kim's behind it. That's fantastic, but are you doomed now to huge episodes? Like, be careful what you wish for. If you pull off the big one, does that now cement the fact that you guys are going to be pushing envelopes and being big the whole time?
Well, I don't think we thought we'd be big every time. A good script doesn't have to be big, and a good scary script doesn't have to be big. And like I said, Kim finished that on time, on budget. It was not we didn't feel like we went off the rails. The next one was big, but
It was big. The next one with all the...
Dude.
We're going to get into that later, but
So big.
all the airplane stuff.
but I always looked at the seasons like not necessarily what any individual episode's budget was, but the budget for the season. So we'd say, all right, if we're going to spend X amount of dollars, that's going to be over and above what we would normally spend on this episode. How are we going to make that up 2 episodes down the line? You say, all right, well, maybe we should do a locked room episode or just something that we know is not going to be expensive. So it kind of balances out over the course of the season, leaving enough money where your finales are going to be big. So I always approach producing a series that way. I'm not so concerned about every single episode, whether it's going to be, if an episode would is going to be big and going to be over budget, you plan to compensate for that down the line.
Right. That makes sense.
In this episode, we have Amy Acker is a great guest star in this episode, really holds it down as the mother. She's been in a lot of other things at this point and since then. How involved are you as executive producer in casting?
In LA casting, I would be in the room as would Eric, and we would do that together. When you're shooting out of town, like we shot in Vancouver, it's not always easy to get the director's input because the director is prepping. So the auditions are all recorded, and you would send it up for the director to see. Pretty much, if Eric and I agreed who we should go with, we'd say to the director, this is who we want, and that's pretty much the way it would go. Conversely, casting in Vancouver, where the director's kind of the guy, and we get the recording sent down to us, and the director would list his choices, 1, 2, 3. And, we try to go with what the director wanted since he was not so involved in the LA casting. And most of the casting, as you guys know, is done out of Vancouver. You guys were lucky.
Oh, I know.
We were. Wasn't it the
we would have like 2 or 3 parts from LA and the rest would be Vancouver.
Right.
Back in the day, you're talking about sending tapes up to the director. Well, now that means emailing a digital file or
Right.
looking at
Now
a link.
that's all we do.
So now, but back in the day, were you like FedExing stacks of videotapes? Like what was
No, even then we could send electronically.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Wow. Look at that.
I just say those things because I'm an old guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't say, I'm recording that episode. I'm taping that episode.
Yeah,
Totally.
sure. Of
Same.
course.
I'm always, I'll say send tape. I still say that. And, and now it's changed so much. Like casting, you were all doing online. Yeah, I mean, when you directed in the last season, Richard, were you ever in the room?
Well, yeah, we still did casting in the room
In Canada.
In Canada, yeah.
But if you had a big chunky role, you wanted to cast it from L.A.?
It depends. Like, Vancouver had a lot of talent. And so, there are several of the big guest roles that I cast that I was involved in for my episodes where we would find it in Vancouver, which was always strongly encouraged from a fiscal standpoint. They were like, hey, if you could find a home run in Vancouver, yay.
Yeah, that's true. Early on, it was less. There was less of that until we really kind of got comfortable with the Vancouver acting community. But like in the case of Dead in the Water with Amy Acker, that was, maybe she can correct me, but I don't think she read. I just think this is what we wanted.
Offered her.
I'm sure, because she had a big resume at the time. She was working all the time, still is, but.
And it's the same with Daniel U. Kelly, who's in that episode, who I had worked with. He was the lead actor in the movie I produced, Cujo, and he was also in Hardcastle and McCormick. So
right,
just go get Danny. I mean,
wow! And remind us who he played in this episode. He's the sheriff.
Yeah,
he's great. He's the ultimate bad guy.
Yeah, so
he's great.
So that's actually, that's a good example of something you're doing there. Like you have that history with so many folks in the industry that aside from just putting together a crew and hiring Serge, these roles come up. You got a Rolodex of actors you've worked with that is deep. And I'm sure for a season 1 show, especially that no one knows what it is or if it's going to be good. It really helped to have you making those phone calls to people you had relationships with to go, hey, come do this show.
Yeah. Yes. That made my life and Eric's life easier. I said, Gary Cole would be great in this part. Oh, can you get Gary Cole? Let me call Gary. And, he went up, had a good time and did it.
Wow.
Right.
It's helpful. Yeah.
That's very helpful.
All right. Speaking of Amy Acker, guess who we've got on the line?
Who?
Amy Acker.
What?
Hi, Amy.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for being willing to come back and talk about a show you did 16 years ago. This is mighty big of you.
Do you remember the casting for this episode? Did they ask you to be a part of it? Did you have to read for it?
I did not. They just asked me to do it, which is always,
That's great.
The best way to get a job.
That's what we predicted. We were just talking about you right before you came on, and Bob had predicted by his best memory that you were a phone call, would you come please do this show? So he wins the bet. But you'd never heard of the show. The show had been on for 5 minutes at that point.
Yeah. I guess it hadn't even aired yet, really.
No,
right?
it hadn't.
Yeah.
So how much about that do you recall?
Well, I like working and it sounded fun and it seemed like a good part. And I love Vancouver. And so I was just really excited to go. I had like a new baby and it was kind of my first time to get to escape the house.
Wow.
I was like, sign me up.
Wow.
I'll stay longer. No.
So how's that baby now? 16?
Yeah. Which one was it? I have an almost 17-year-old and a 15-year-old.
Wow. That's awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, so you're so great in it. You really hold down the episode. We were saying this first season of the show had so many great guest stars.
Yeah.
And everybody, really knocked it out of the park. It's a pretty scary episode.
Yeah, it's real creepy.
What was the scariest, hardest scene for you to shoot? Was it being in the tub when you get drowned in the tub?
The tub was a pretty crazy one because
you also had to be fake naked, right?
It's called Fake It.
Yeah, there was a lot happening. It was dark. There was some fake naked stuff, which was almost naked.
Yeah,
and a tub filled with chocolate milk that I was inside.
Is that what it was?
And then then when you actually went to set to shoot the scene, what was that like? This sounds like just a 1980s party.
That was just the Sutton place.
But for real, that was chocolate milk?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Delicious.
Oh my God. That would not have, you try to guess what they're using for the stuff. That would not have been on my short list.
It's a terrifying scene. And then Sam comes and yanks you out of the tub. And there you are, sort of fake naked.
Yeah.
You really hung up on the fake naked part. I see.
I was thinking that. I was like, this is hard scene for her to shoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he yanks her out of the tub.
Yeah, good point. It's a good way to meet and bond with an actor. Hello, I'm Amy. I'll be naked in the tub. You'll be grabbing me out of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
How far into the schedule did that scene come? If that's the most challenging.
I actually think that was I'm not remembering exactly, but I feel like that was one of the last things we did.
So you knew the guys.
It wasn't like they weren't like day one.
Right.
Get in the tub.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, look, you had kids at the time, but they were tiny. But
yes.
Had you done a lot of playing, because you're young now, but you were very young then. Had you done a lot of playing moms and that kind of thing at that point in your career?
No, I think that may have been the first mom I ever played on TV.
I would think.
Yeah.
You were a child bride in that show. How'd you find working with a child actor?
He was great. I mean, the whole scene where he was drowning and jumping in the lake, I mean, that was definitely the hardest part of the episode. I don't think it was Robert, but someone came up to me like 15 years later at Comic-Con who was a producer on Supernatural, and I turned around and he was like, "You ruined the water for us." And I was like, "What?" That was so hard. We never did water again after that.
Was that you, Bob?
It was not.
Okay.
Was it Jim Michaels, maybe?
Yes, it could be. Or Phil has the charm.
It was all in fun.
Yeah.
So you got to work with Kim Manners on this episode.
I did.
And we were just talking about Kim because Rich got to work with him, and I missed him by the time I was on the show. Do you remember much about that experience and what it was like working with Kim?
I mean, he had just so much energy. I had just come off of Angel, and his brother Kelly Manners was the producer of Angel. So I'd worked with him for the last 5 years previous. And they both are like so energetic, so much life, just so much fun to be around. And I feel like, he was a great guy.
That's cool. Did he ever talk to you when you were shooting about like the tone of the show or? Yeah,
because you're coming in blind. How did they bring you up to speed about what this actually was striving to be?
Gosh, I'm sure that there was talk about that, but I don't remember a specific conversan.
Yeah.
I guess if you're reading the script that says you'll be drowning in the water, you're not thinking, so comedy?
I mean, the boys were, already like so on it and such pros, Jared and Jensen, and they set the tone. It seemed like, which would be my guess as to why it ran for millions and millions of years, is because they were so great to work with and had such a great attitude about the whole thing, and I feel like they just set the tone for the whole thing and wanted, so it was clear what was expected of you by how great they were.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be wrong, but aren't you from Texas?
Yes.
Did you boys, because Jared and Jensen are Texas boys, did you guys bond over that?
Yeah, that's the go-to first thing. We're like, oh, we're all from Texas. So it was
cool.
Great.
Where in Texas are you from?
I'm from Dallas.
Okay.
Which I think Jensen is.
Yeah, one
Jensen's,
of the boys is from there.
Jensen's Dallas.
Yeah, I think we went to like rival high schools.
Oh, funny.
Ooh, and yet still you made the scene work. It's amazing. Oh, you're over.
It's like a Romeo Juliet.
Very much so. So now listen, you've done a gazillion shows, super successful, work every 5 minutes. You did Person of Interest, and on that show, Sarah Shahi was also in Person of Interest and had been in Supernatural.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm curious if that ever came up. It's like, oh, you did that creepy show with the Texas guys? So did I. Was that ever a conversation piece?
Sarah and I also both did Alias. And I feel like there was one other show that we had both been on. So we did have a discussion of like,
funny.
We just had constantly missed each other and then ended up getting to make out a lot on Person of Interest.
At some point, dare I say it, Rob and I will get that role.
I was going to say, note to self, watch Person of Interest. And then you're also in the Buffy and Angel world, the Joss Whedon world, and you're not the last person, I guess, from that world to guest star in Supernatural. I had a small role in Buffy, so I would be one of those. But when you go to conventions, do you see a lot of crossover fans? Do people from Supernatural come up as well?
I mean, I feel like everyone is a Supernatural fan, and there's like, Angel and Buffy are now 20 years ago since they've been on the air, but it's fun to see like the new generation of people passing that down to their kids. And I feel like those kids have like seen Supernatural first and now are going back and watching Angel and Buffy, which is fun.
I know, it is fun. We've noticed that in the last 10 years of doing the Supernatural conventions, that it's gone from fans to fans and their children.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. It's
We're
crazy.
going through generations, which says a lot about how old we are. But
So people come to you at these conventions. Obviously, you have a litany of work that they're drawn to you for. Supernatural being one role early on, but still, fans who are fans are committed fans. Do people bring you like 8x10s from that show, or ceramic bathtubs for you to sign and that kind of thing?
I've definitely signed some like DVDs and such, some Supernatural stuff here and there. But
For the kids at home, a DVD is a round metallic disc that has programming on it. If you put it in a player called a DVD player.
I always think it's funny, they still send us the screeners. They send people in the unions get screeners at awards time, and they send us DVDs to watch the screeners on.
I know.
apparently you can opt out of that.
I just heard that. Yeah,
For the environment, or because you don't have a DVD.
exactly. I just heard that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you
Oh,
can
good to
opt
know.
out.
We've learned something here today beyond Supernatural from
Yeah.
Amy Acker. What's next for you? What are you up to? What has Amy Acker got in that pipeline?
Well, right now I am recurring on 911 Lone Star.
Oh, great.
So I'm dating Rob Lowe on that.
Congratulations.
Yes. And I did a pilot for Freeform that we're waiting to hear if it gets picked up, which is, got some Supernatural vibes. It's kind of a horror-ish. It's kind of not really Supernatural. It's more of like a Knives Out type thing, but there's
awesome.
definitely a horror element to it.
That's awesome.
Great.
Does 911 Lone Star shoot in the Lone Star State?
No, but it shoots in Los Angeles, which
That's great.
is amazing.
Good.
That never happens.
Good for those of us with families.
There's so many shows in Texas doubling it for Los Angeles. It's good that they should make Los Angeles double for Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
Why the hell not?
Exactly.
You don't need to know it's Texas, because as soon as you see Rob Lowe on TV, you immediately think Texas. I mean, it's just nobody screams big hat, boots like old Robbie Lowe. That's awesome. Congratulations. I hope your pilot gets picked up and runs for 16 seasons and surpasses Supernatural. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for being a part of this experience and this conversation.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. That was so fun.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Bob, people who know Supernatural obviously associate it with a fantastic soundtrack. It's part of what made the show early on. I will say 70s rock was sort of a cornerstone of the whole tone of the show. And there's a whole Zeppelin Rules moment between Dean and the young boy character of Lucas at the end of Dead in the Water, which sort of tips his hat to the fact that Dean's a huge Zeppelin fan. But, trivia, there's no Zeppelin music in the show Supernatural ever. Is that something that you guys could never get Bobby Plant and James Page on the horn, or what happened there?
That was really a question of money. I mean, we tried a couple of times, but it's so expensive. It was just out of our price range.
Yeah, but you guys still managed to get some huge acts in the show. They weren't cheap.
Some guys were great about it. Others, not so much.
Yeah.
Bob, this is fantastic. I know we're going to talk to you more about other shows.
In the next episode.
Yeah, but this is so great to finally get you on here with us to have this conversation. An argument can be made that there's Jared, there's Jensen, there's Kripke, there's Singer, and you have been the Rock for 15 years.
Absolutely.
And are a key component to the success and longevity of this show. So it's awesome to have you here.
My pleasure, guys, really. And it was great to see you too.
Love you, buddy. And
God willing, we'll play some music again one of these days.
that would be great.
Indeed.
That'd be great. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, Bob. We'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
I hope you're enjoying the episode, but we need to pull over for a second for some messages. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. And now back to the episode.
Wow, that was fantastic.
So great to talk
There's
to.
nobody I love more than Bob Singer.
He's so great. And really, we can't say it enough, but he really is the backbone of the show.
Oh, he's so great. I mean, just as a director, as a visionary, as a guy who's in the writer's room, executive producer in the purest definition of the word.
Yeah. All right, let's do some bits.
Let's do it.
We like to do a bit called Antiques Road Trip, where we talk about basically the things that age this show.
Right.
There's a strange piece of paper Dean is receiving at the top of the episode.
I noticed that. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and I may have this wrong, but I think it's called a new paper or newspaper.
I think if it's a brand new paper, it'd be called New Paper.
New paper. It's a new paper that has the news on it.
Oh, that's weird.
Do you remember newspapers,
Nope.
everybody?
I'm too young.
They were great. Well, I used to get the Sunday LA Times every Sunday.
Sure you did, Pappy.
They were great. Got to the news. And also they're great lining for pet cages and sometimes wrapping paper.
Ah, what a money saver.
Yeah. And then we like to check in on the bitch count.
Which is really, we need to retitle it because it sounds offensive.
I guess it does,
But
yeah.
what we're really doing is we're counting the number of times that mainly Dean, but that people say "son of a bitch"
Or bitch.
or "bitch"
Yeah.
in the show. So we're counting those words.
And sad to report, there are no bitches in this episode.
You know, the explanation was longer than the bit.
Yeah. So we kept it clean in this episode.
Yep.
But we do have some trivia. The lake house that they used in this show, in this episode, was also used in Jensen's movie Devour, which I have not seen, but I hear it's very weird.
I have also not seen it, but I hear that it's weird.
I'm going to go ahead and say this is the first time I've ever heard that there was a movie called Devour that Jensen was in.
I know, same.
So look that up. IMDb that.
You know what? I
What
hear
else?
that Jared had a broken hand while filming this episode. Now, veteran interviewers would have confirmed this with the executive producer when he was on the show, but sadly those guys called in sick and we're here.
Yeah, so
We have no idea if it's true or not, but that's the word on the street.
that's right. The episode begins with a running joke throughout the series that Loch Ness Monster is real.
I don't know why that's a joke. The Loch Ness Monster is real.
That's right. This is the first time the boys use non-rock aliases, Ford and Hamill, which they return to all the way in season 15, episode 5, Proverbs 17:3.
Ford and Hamill. Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Cooking. Who are these guys?
There was a movie called Star Wars. that
Not a
was seemed
fan.
Okay. All right, Dad's Journal. Let's get into the lore of it all.
Okay.
This episode doesn't use a specific urban myth or monster, so there's not as much lore to unpack. But interestingly, the overall context of the show, this is the second ghost the boys have taken on. And for a second time, it wasn't ganked via burning the bones. In fact, the ghost isn't really defeated at all, at least not by the boys. Peter finishes the unfinished business by killing Jake. So not a great track record here.
I did watch the episode, as we do in our prep, and I couldn't help but wonder, is that it for the kid? Or is he, I mean, he's still floating around out there. I know they talk about the lake being drained, but
Yeah.
it wasn't drained during the credits. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, that kid could
No, he's
get
still there.
He could get a hankering to kill and do it again.
I think we were supposed to believe that since he killed the sheriff, his business is done there.
Yeah,
He's
well-
killed both the boys that killed him.
I know, but I'm just saying that's kind of, I don't know. Somebody left the cake half baked, in my opinion. Sam
true.
and Dean, I'm looking at you.
Wow. All right. The gauntlet has been thrown. Yeah. All right. Episode credits. This episode stars Jared Padalecki as Sam Winchester, Jensen Ackles as Dean Winchester, Amy Acker as Andrea Barr,
Daniel Hugh Kelly as Sheriff Jake Devens, Nico McKeown as Lucas Barr.
Bruce Dawson as Bill Carlton, and Troy Clare as Will Carlton.
The episode also features D. Harlan Cutshall, Betho Shirkoff, Amber Broike, Aaron Rhoda, and Kiera
And
Capito.
to all those people, apologies
Yeah, please.
if we didn't get the name right.
Which we didn't.
Dead in the Water was written by Sarah Gamble and Rael Tucker.
It was directed by the illustrious Kim Manners and edited by Anthony Pinker, with music by Christopher Lennertz and featured songs by,
Jesse Turnbow, Rat, Billy Squire, and Bad Company.
with songs on streaming by J.D. Bradshaw, Robin Barnett, and 383 Stroker.
It was executive produced by Eric Kripke and Robert Singer.
Dead in the Water first aired on September 27th, 2005.
This episode of Supernatural Then and Now was hosted and executive produced by Richard Speight Jr. and Rob Benedict.
Produced by Stephen Hine, written by Jessica Mason, and edited and associate produced by Trey Booty.
Audio engineering by Caitlin Hawley. Music provided by Tim Wynn.
The episode was recorded with the help of Sonic Fuel Studios.
For the latest news on this and other podcasts, follow Story Mill Media on Instagram or Twitter. Hi, everybody. It's Rob Benedict.
You want to say that without the nuts in your mouth?
If I had a nickel.
Here's an interesting Bob Seger crossover story.
Okay.
Bob Singer, our guest today, has appeared at some Supernatural conventions.
That's right.
And is a hell of a musician.
That's right.
And has played with the band Loud and Swain and a couple of big Saturday night shows.
That's right. My band, Loud and Swain.
Right.
And
Played a little, done some blues, played some harp, you know, and it's awesome. I was on a flight to one of those shows, I guess in Jersey or wherever we were going, Chicago, wherever you were playing with us, Bob. And I was talking to Adam Malin, the guy who runs Creation Conventions, about one of the songs we're going to do with you, and talking about playing with Bob Singer and what we're going to do. And then I continue down the airplane towards the restroom, and I'm waiting, and a guy follows me. He's like, "Excuse me, are you a musician?" I'm like, I'm a hobby player. I mean, I suppose.
I dabble.
And he's like, "Are you playing with Bob?" And I thought he said Singer. And I said, "Yeah, I'm playing behind Bob Singer this weekend." And he proceeds to go off on how much he loves Bob Seger and how many times he's seen Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. And at this point, I have stuck both my feet in the tar, and there's no way out of this.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah. No, that was a dope venue.
that was a great tour. We love that tour.
Literally, I'm going like, crap, this man's... He thinks I'm playing for Seger,
Right.
as part of the Silver Bullet Band. He's going to land, try to find the show at his local auditorium, and then realize I'm a liar. I better get the hell out of the airport before this guy
he's going
figures it
to
out.
show up at the Marriott and think he's going to be seeing Seeger.
Well, for one
Ironically,
moment.
I think we were actually playing a Bob Seger song with Bob Singer.
Well, there you go. It's come full circle.
I mean, this is going to take you guys like, what, the next 10 years or
Yeah.
something? Or
Rob and I will be 67 when we're done, and we're not kidding.
That was great, man. I get nervous. She's so pretty.
Well, note to self, if you don't get nervous around somebody, you don't find them attractive. Good to know.
That's why you never make me
Please,
nervous.
God, tell me I don't make you nervous.
Story Mill Media.